When we talk about cultural gatekeeping, when we talk about trying to create boundaries around Black conversations, Black people, Black love, Black marriage, all of that, how can you gatekeep a culture that has chosen integration? Because here's the thing, Black, America by and large has chosen integration. We have chosen to, try to essentially integrate, to mix, to get along with other ethnicities, other ethnic groups. This is what has happened, especially over the last couple of decades. This is what, Black America by and large has chosen. And then in particular, if we want to look at Black women have made it abundantly clear over the last couple of decades that their preference and their desire is to mix with other races of men. I mean, we have seen magazine articles, we have seen movies, we have seen talk shows, probably documentaries. We literally have seen, even in the educational realm, I mean, you have different professors, you have different people, even in the educational realm, talking about this issue of the shortage of the good, eligible Black men. Black women collectively, I'm not saying all, but collectively have made it abundantly clear that not only are they open to wanting to date and marry out, that for many of them, it is the best option. They have made this abundantly clear. So here's the thing. If you have made it clear that you desire to date and marry into other ethnicities, if the message is out there and there is no collective pushback, a Black woman, so they support content creators, they support movies, they watch movies, they consume products that essentially say, okay, it's okay for us to swirl. Then why would you be upset if the daughters of those men, if the sisters of those men, if the mothers of those men, why would you be upset if they weigh in? And here is my issue with the conversation. When Brother Omawale asked his question about gatekeeping, I said his concern is incredibly valid. But we're talking to a group of people, and we're especially talking to a group of women who don't believe in culturally gatekeeping all across the board. Now, there are a handful of them I know who are trying to stand up and do things Ma'at Speaks. I Am Courtney Michelle is really trying to find ways to help out. There is a handful of them. But by and large, by our actions, and even by the things that we consume and even promote, Black women have shown that they are, at least if they don't believe in it for themselves, they are open to the idea of swirling. If you want to swirl, if you are open to dating and mating out, if you promote dating and mating out, or if you think it is okay, you have got to be okay with the consequences of that. And the consequences of that is now integrating and mixing into another culture. And that may also mean that they are going to maybe criticize or start to weigh in on issues that impact you. Why? Because you're now a part of their family. That's now your sister-in-law talking to you. That's now your aunt. That's now maybe even your daughter. If you continue on this whole swirling propaganda, one of the persons who actually called into Omawale's show, I'm going to try to play it in a few minutes. I thought it was brilliant because she was honest. A Black woman, she literally said, I'm embarrassed to be a Black woman. I go online and I see all these negative things about myself. And so, yeah, it's eugenics. I want to have kids who are lighter because I don't want them to have to deal with my self-hatred. I don't want them to have to deal with, other men online or other people online saying I'm desirable. She was honest. And so how can you in one sense say that you are at least open and that race doesn't matter when it comes to dating and mating? If it works for you, it's okay. As long as you can connect, it's okay. How can you say that and then be upset if somebody now weighs in on your dating and mating prospects? After all, that's your family, right? And so this is where I think it can get, just me personally, I think this is where it can get a little bit inconsistent. And this is why I do think sometimes when we have these conversations about cultural gatekeeping, I understand the emotion behind it. And I understand, I think the emotions are valid. And I understand that it's complicated. But unless it is consistent all across the board, and there is a willingness to cultural gatekeep all across the board, then we're going to have an emotional conversation and we're going to feel some kind of way. And we may even get some views. We may even get some calls. We may even get, a couple of lives out of it, but nothing is going to change. because unless there are some different systematic things that are changes, unless there are actions that actually show that we are really about cultural gatekeeping, then it's going to continue. The 1960s had many Black people against integration. It was forced by the US government and shady liberals. Black nationalists opposed integration. Yes, I do. Yeah, I do agree with that. So I don't want to say, of course, everybody. Omawale being an example. He's very much like, no, we need to build our own institutions because what we are experiencing right now is the product of systems that are not in our favor. And he's consistent about that. So, you know, Omawale is somebody who's consistent. He's been doing his thing for, you know, a couple of years now, and he's got a lot of pushback. People calling him hoteps, people looking at him who has an African-centered perspective and disparaging him. And so the people who actually believe in building Black systems and building Black institutions, a lot of times they are actually met with insults. But I do agree with you, Kevin C, on that. It was not everybody, but we could say it was a sufficient amount of people that this is becoming a bit of an issue. Shout out to you, Celine. It says, to be fair, white men don't allow anyone in their dating. Yeah. Okay, let me see wisdom bars. I think you conflated integration with wanting to be with white people. Integration was more about a mean to justify an end. If we wanted to be with them, interracial numbers would be much higher. So I hear what you're saying, but the only reason, and Kevin C had mentioned this earlier, where it was like, you had Black folks who didn't necessarily want to integrate, and you also definitely had those who did. When I'm talking about integration, I'm talking about whether or not we want it or not. The fact that, you know, we go to grocery stores, we consume movies, we live in apartment buildings, we bank at these different institutions, we drive on roads, we do things, we essentially do things, and we're using products, or we're using items, we're using infrastructures that are created and very much ran by white America. That's essentially the definition of integration. If you want to do separate, this is going back to what Omawale was saying. It's like, okay, if you want to do separate, then you start to have your own banking institutions. You start to have maybe even your own homes, your own real estate. You start to have your own businesses, banks. This is what other cultures are doing. And outside of that, we can talk about, oh, we're separate equal, but it's like we're still using products and we're still consistently consuming products that we don't control. And so that is what I'm referring to. Shout out to you.